Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversations in the Future of Work. I am your host, Rachel Cossar, and I am really excited to have another Rachel on the show today. And we're going to be talking about L&D and leadership and legacy in AI. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I posted on LinkedIn earlier. You don't get too many Rachels that get together. So, hopefully we don't confuse people.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you mind sharing, before we get into this first question here, just a little bit about your background and what you're working on now?
Of course. So right at the moment, I am the Chief Innovation Officer for AnswerSource, which is an educational services company. So we deal in educational services and technology. Super proud to have brought in our new Answer TMS, which is a training management scheduling tool that was a big problem in the company I worked for before. So I spent 19 years running L&D at Hilti, which is in layperson's terms, the easiest thing to say is that they provide tools and services for the construction industry. So I've been in L&D for a long time. Like many people in L&D, I didn't start in L&D. I actually started in engineering and in the business side, which has given me maybe a little different lens for learning and development. And that kind of ties us in. If you don't mind, if I answer the question right away, how have I seen L&D evolve? It's been a lot. It's been almost 30 years now that I've been in the corporate workforce. And over that time, I think I've seen L&D go from everything from very structured, obviously in-person training only, because we didn't have the possibility to do hybrid training or digital training, et cetera. And so we thought it was a big deal when we first went to being able to put information on CD-ROMs and transfer it to people. So it's definitely been a transition from the technology and how we use technology in learning and development. I think the other thing that I am so happy to say has changed in learning and development is we're finally spending more time talking about analytics. We're finally spending more time talking about the impact of what we're doing, rather than, for a long time, it was really, we measured, butts in seats. We measured smile sheets, how happy were people with it. And thanks to a lot of the pioneers, like Jim Kirkpatrick or, Phillips, family, they certainly changed the way we looked at L&D, and it focuses more on how we are able to determine that we're actually having an impact with learning and development, with talent development of all different kinds. And I think the interesting thing is that my hope is, as we make this AI human collaboration come to life, that now the fact that narrative had already started to change, and now we have technology that's going to enable us to be able to really dig into that. And we're not using it as much in L&D yet, in my opinion, as I think we should. So I'll give an example from another industry. I was listening to a podcast on, it's about AI in healthcare and how that is changing. And they were discussing that now, by using information from medical records, they can actually predict if 1 in 5 smokers get cancer. They can now predict which one of those 5 they need to be going and doing the, sort of preventative measures ahead of time, long before the person ever gets cancer. And when you think, if we can do that in the medical field, what we could do with that in learning and development. So it's definitely there. The evolution is far from over. We just now need to be making sure that we're really, I think, remembering that we're not, I think a lot of what L&D is talking about right now, and many fields, are AI is going to replace us, instead of talking about how humans and AI can collaborate how our humanity is actually one of the most critical components for the use of AI inside L&D. And for heaven's sakes, just don't take it and tell it to output a course, because you're going to be you're going to be sadly disappointed at the lack of impact it has.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. You bring up so many interesting concepts. Like, number one, the evolution of digital technologies in the learning space, from, to your point, like being able to put content on a CD-ROM and share it outside of like a classroom environment, right? Like, we forget how much evolution has already happened to get us to this point. I think we also tend to forget, and granted, AI does seem like a pretty unique disruptor, but we do forget that some of the fears that we may be experiencing now related to, oh my God, is this going to like completely like make me lose my job or whatever, were very present when like computers came online, right? And the reality is that like jobs will evolve as a result of this new enabling technology, right? Like, there will be an evolution in jobs and tasks and responsibilities, and people will rise to the occasion to find where they fit next. And hopefully it's going to be a place, to your point, where we are then, like in your example with the healthcare, like if we are then able to do so much more good and have so much more impact as a result of some of the pattern recognition that AI does, just immeasurably better than humans, or the like redundant task components, allowing us to then have more time for interesting conversations and strategic moving forward. Like that is such an interesting perspective. I think that's helpful in many ways. So I appreciate you kind of touching on so many of those options, or those elements. Right.
Exactly. And I was telling somebody that I was writing a book on leadership, and they were sort of laughing and like, how on earth does somebody who's in the innovation space, like, why are you writing about leadership aside from having been a leader for a really long time? And I said, because it's actually going to allow us to do more in that space, to bring more humanity in, and give us the time and the space and the tools to develop the next generations. And AI in no way removes that duty. Like you said, it gives us tools that we can use to scale our input, our output. It gives us a mirror to look into. It has so many positives. And in some cases, I think we're letting fear hold us back. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Right. Totally. I'm going to go a little bit out of order here, just based on something you also shared in your introduction, is like the measurement and the analytics behind L&D programs. So you mentioned some of the metrics that you used to measure, before you had the tools that we have today. So what kinds of metrics or analytics are you finding most powerful that either exist today, or what would be some metrics or analytics you would love to be able to capture more effectively in learning program success?
I think the things that we say in L&D a lot of times is we talk about why we can't get the metrics that we need. We talk about why we don't have access to revenue data or sales data or business metrics. And we talk about that as an excuse for why we're not measuring them. I think that's the first thing that AI is going to bring into play so much more, because now I don't even necessarily have to have access to those systems. If a company uses Salesforce.com, I can have the reports from that are anonymized. So we're not talking about worrying about employee data or anything, but I can have anonymized data come out of there, and I can utilize AI to say, where are people actually suffering from a talent development perspective? So instead of it being the squeaky wheel gets the attention, and so we think that it's actually that people need to learn to ask better questions to sell better. But the reality is actually it could be that our leads are awful. It could be that our salespeople are amazing at finding the problem, but they're not good at closing. And I think that's where, I mean, I'm using sales as an example here because it's kind of easy to measure, but we could do the same thing in anything. Logistics. Okay, why are our inventory costs so high? Like, we really need to get these inventory costs under control, but we don't seem to be able to get the right inventory in the right place at the right time. I can now understand, is that a human element issue or is that a system issue? And if it's a human element issue, now I can stop and take a look and go, is it a human issue because of culture? So for example, people are fearful, that is something that happens a lot. They're fearful that if they don't have the right inventory in the right place, so they err on the side of caution and they go in and they have too much inventory in place, which costs the company money. It could be a lack of knowledge or understanding about what the cost of that inventory is. And so this is why you can apply it to any job, whether it's a kind of easy to measure job like sales. Although I say easy to measure, but understanding that that's a very complex set of things that go into that.
Yes.
And I think the common denominator that I'm using here is that you have got to be looking at the metrics that make sense to that business. Like, what is important in that business? What are they measuring? What are the systems that are there? Not what does your LMS tell you? Because your LMS, unless it's very well integrated into all of your other platforms, is not giving you anything more than what we used to be able to get with pencil and paper. Who signed into the classroom today? Right. That's the same thing an LMS brings you. Who passed the test today? That's, again, we did that on paper. And I think that means that if you can't get your systems integrated, which a lot of L&D departments can't, and that's fine, AI now brings us the opportunity to utilize business metrics, match them up against your learning programs that you are currently delivering, match them up against if you're doing needs analyses, match them up against that, and now start looking at those types of metrics. Is it close rates? Is it bad leads? Is it not understanding the cost of extra inventory? Is it a cultural component? The metrics need to relate back to what matters to your leadership. And, you know, it's interesting because as I was doing a lot of interviews for the book, I found that there were people who mistakenly thought their leadership actually wanted to know how many people they were putting through classes for a couple of reasons. One, because they were saying, this is why I need the number of trainers that I have, or this is why I have to upgrade to a more automated system, which were important points for those specific decisions that were made. If we're hiring trainers, yes, we need to know how many people are coming through the training programs. Yeah. But if what we're looking at is more, I'm trying to figure out as CEO or C-suite leaders, what I'm trying to figure out is actually, how do we run our business more profitably? Well, guess what? Telling me how many people are going through training is not helping me as a C-suite leader know whether or not what you're doing in training is going to help me be more profitable. And that disconnect between what L&D tends to measure and what the management actually needs to know. They need to know, how fast are people getting up to productivity? They need to know what's causing early attrition rates. They need to know conversion rates in your sales calls. They need to know what are acceptable scrap levels. You know, what are our quality metrics that we're aiming at if you're a manufacturing facility or something like that. They need to know, if you're an IT services company, what's my downtime that the system is costing us. Right. Those are the metrics and the analytics. And it does vary. It's not as simple as saying that there's one set of metrics that works for every single organization. But it is as simple as saying, what are the metrics that your CEO, your COO, your CFO, what are they talking about? And now how can I understand which ones of those learning and development or talent development
Yeah.
can affect.
Right. I mean, it's really the like holy grail of information integration and different outputs based on
Yes.
like what actually matters, right? I think that at Virtual Sapiens, we're always trying to find those points of integration. And I think I wonder also about your thoughts on this. Like, it seems like more and more, in order to get those systems integrated, the technology itself has to actually be quite integrated, right?
Yes, and I think that's what stops many people because, for example, not trying to call out Workday here, but to integrate with Workday is very expensive. Um, and so now you're stopping and you're thinking, okay, if I integrate one system in with Workday that isn't a native Workday system that's not like already, connected to Workday, is that worth the cost to do that integration? Even if your company says, yes, it's worth the cost. Now, can I get all the right stakeholders on board to agree to this? Now, what does that do to my data privacy? What does that do to the risk we're inserting in? What happens now if somebody ends up with some type of administrative authorization and they see information they weren't supposed to see? Like now you're getting into a whole new mess of
Yeah.
issues that goes way beyond can we figure out the API to connect these two systems?
Right.
And that's where I think in today's world, okay, if you can't integrate the systems for whatever reason, don't get yourself so caught up in not being able to integrate the systems. How can you get the data from the system in a way that allows you? And this is where, again, I know I'm kind of harping on AI here, but this is where you can always use an AI agent. Like it doesn't have to be a human who downloads this report and uploads it into the system.
Right.
Those things can now be fully automated without necessarily requiring any type of integration between platforms. And that is going to make such a huge difference in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I would say in the next 2 or 3 years in most fields, but L&D sometimes can take a little longer because they're a little further removed from some of that. But for sure, within the next 5 years, I think we're going to see actually fewer integrations and more information sharing between systems.
Which would that mean that there also then has to be like an AI agent that has access to those different information systems?
Exactly. And so I think that's where, but that's where I think a lot of systems already have that. So for example, you can take and you can put reports out of Salesforce.com or Workday or any LMS out there, and you can have those reports emailed into an email account. And you can then have that email account monitored by an agent, an AI agent, who then moves them into the next. So again, it doesn't mean that your AI has to be able to be sitting inside someone else's platform.
Right. Like the data obviously exists, the exports already exist. It's just a question of having something super efficient be able to cull through it.
Yes. Again, going back to healthcare, there's this, there's an app out. It's called, I want to say it's called DocSnap maybe. And it allows the patient to actually have control over their medical records. So they can get all their medical records from every facility that they go to, which is your right, legally, it's your right to have your medical records. But previously, all of those medical records might be a file folder. So like my father, we had a 3-ring binder that literally, was this thick. It was probably 2-3 inches thick with all the things that we knew about his health history, his family history, the things he'd gone through in his elder years, et cetera. And we would go into every doctor's appointment. We would just add the new information into that. Now, there is an app that allows you to do that. And you now can say, I want to share this information with, say, I want to share it with my partner, or I want to share it with my primary care physician. And then I go to another specialist and I want to share it with them. Like you have that authorization because it's your own medical records. And because it uses AI technology inside it, if, for example, they want to say, take a look at my dad's cardiac records, anything related to his cardiac health. okay, now it can literally categorize that for that doctor who's wanting to do that. So he doesn't have to page through tons of unnecessary things like he did in my case with a 3-ring binder. He was flipping and we would have tabs, colored tabs on there.
Yeah.
Now all of that's done. So again, I think we get back into the fact that there's so many possibilities now that exist. And so now as a learner, imagine if I had one of those, we don't have that for L&D yet, but imagine that I had one of those that had everything from my university degree transcripts, all the courses I've ever taken inside the companies I've worked for, all the courses I've taken on my own, the things that I've added to it as I've learned and done certificate programs. Wouldn't that be cool? Now I could have my own, like not just what my company says is my skills profile. I could have my own skills profile. I could have my own achievements right there. And potentially someday, then it could even tell me like, oh, this would be a great job for you, or this would be a perfect next step, or you'd be really well qualified to do this role.
Right.
That'd be fun. I mean, we're dreaming now, but still it'd be fun.
I mean, what a world to dream in, right? So this transitions perfectly into the next question, right? So we have all of this possibility, and there is a lot of change already going on, right? Like everyone's trying to grapple with how AI and why AI, and like in a way that actually makes sense and drives impact versus just like doing things to do things. So how do you balance innovation with strategic alignment to ensure that these learning programs are continuing to contribute to engagement and then ROI in this like new way?
I think for me, it kind of goes back to what I just was saying about knowing what keeps your CEO up at night. What's important to your CEO, your CFO, your COO, because innovation it's not about chasing every new tool or every idea. It's really about channeling that toward the outcomes that matter the most to the business that you're in. And again, that's going to be so specific to your company, because your company is going to have a culture of, I listen to a lot of podcasts in case you can't tell. So I refer to them a lot of times, but I was listening to one on product management, and it was Pendo was in there. And they were talking about the culture of experimentation that they have there. So even if you're a summer intern at Pendo, you are encouraged to experiment and try things out and all of this, all the way to the top leaders. They had 3 different levels in the podcast that I was listening to. And it was so cool because it was not just encouraging innovation, it was directing it in a path. So it was connecting new ideas into the goals that they had as an organization, and then tying those in to say, okay, now which of these are giving us results that are leading us into the next step. And that's where I think if a learning program isn't aligned to those things and directed, you've got to have those guardrails up, because the reality is that people don't want to screw up at work. They really don't. They want to do a good job at work. And so if they're worried that if they experiment with this new technology, that it could have some data privacy leak, or it could have an ethics question, or it maybe they've had it hammered into their head that they can only use this specific language that represents their brand. All of those things will stop us then from innovating. But if we tell people this is the things that are important to us as an organization, here's your guardrails for what you can and should innovate within. These are the things we're worried about. So if your leadership is concerned next year about profitability, awesome. You now know one of the biggest things that you can aim your learning programs at. I can focus on what is it going to take to make our organization more profitable. Now I'm making directed questions into the managers that I'm talking to. What affects profitability in your department? Okay. Now I can align my learning programs and people development into that. And if I make that then my narrative, not only am I affecting ROI, I'm involving all the people, which is going to cause higher engagement. I am involving all the people in and saying, hey, guess what? You're going to hear our CEO talk about profitability every time he opens his mouth next year.
Yeah.
We've taken a look in our department about what affects profitability of this organization. It's these three components. So we're going to pull these three levers. We're going to pull them hard this year. And that's why we're bringing in this training program. That's why we're bringing in this curriculum. That's why, whatever it happens to be. And people are going to buy in, because now guess what? They know why they're in that. Simon Sinek, start with why. They know why they're in that training program. It's not there because you think they're not good at it.
Yeah.
They're there because you think they're an important part of achieving the goals of the next year.
Yeah. And that really kind of flips things on its head for L&D. I feel like there being a greater purpose to all of the learning beyond just almost like individual skill development, right? And I think a lot of that then also relies on interdepartmental communication at these organizations so that L&D is getting that information, right? Which I feel like maybe sometimes doesn't happen.
But get out of your seat. Get out of your seat. Like,
totally.
If you are a physically on-site company, go sit in your central, do you have a barista? Do you have a gathering space of some kind? Go sit in that. If you're a virtual organization, go look at your calendar. As an L&D person, are you meeting with, in my calendar right now, I have monthly meetings with a wide variety of people from a lot of jobs that have nothing to do with mine and Answer Source inside the company. Yeah. And every month I meet with these people, and every month I learn more about this company. Every month I learn more about our clients' challenges. I have every 6 weeks, I have like a group that I get together outside of the organization from external people to come in and think about a topic, toss things around. What happens is we get so caught up in the day-to-day work, and then we expect people to come to us with their problems. And then we wonder why we're treated like order takers. You're treated like an order taker because you're not out there making those connections. Networking in L&D is not a nice to have. It is a business imperative. You have to get out and find out what's happening in those departments, virtually or physically. You have to be out there. You need to be, if it's physically, if there's any way that you can be fly on the wall. If you have 50 customer service agents, can you sit in one day, even 3 hours a month? Can you sit into those calls 3 hours a month? Can you switch it around between different people and see what's working, what's not working? Yep. Can you go on a ride with your salespeople? Can you stand in the warehouse and watch while packages are being created and boxed? Like, L&D has got to get themselves in the middle of whatever the business is that you're doing. Yeah.
I love that. Like, the initiative is definitely set by you, right? So you've already shared like a ton of advice, I think, super valuable learnings, I think, very applicable. So anything else that you would, or specific to this like AI thing, like anything else that you would share with learning professionals?
I think the biggest thing that I would say is be aware that you need governance. AI today is the Wild West. Yep. And so it can create a lot of problems. It does have a lot of potential, but get your people aware of the ethics of using AI, acknowledging when you're using AI, understanding its limitations, its hallucinations, and get yourself a governance group just to help out to select which tools you're going to use, don't just lock everything down, but figure out how to put the guardrails up that are safe for your organization and that fit your specific culture.
Yeah, I think that lends itself well to something else that I've noticed, which is that especially with some of these new AI tools, like people in L&D are really being forced to be a lot more technically savvy. Even in the vendors they bring in now, like, because we work with a lot of L&D departments through our coach partners, and our coach partners and their L&D partners have to like do these like they're not doing the technical audits, right? But they're having to now do technical audits of their vendors every single time, because it includes some kind of AI component, right? And it's just such a completely scary, I think, for some L&D leaders and certainly coach partners, because it is such a
I think
thing.
yes, it is, but it's also a necessary skill. If you're going to play with technology, you need to understand some components of technology. Now, again, you don't have to be, if you're a UX designer, you're talking about vibe coding right now. Like you 100% are. You're not shying away from that. You're understanding that it's not the same as, becoming a full stack developer, but you're understanding enough about it to make that happen. I do think that because L&D has gotten away with so few standards, I mean, we're still using SCORM in e-learning, and XAPI was like it scared everybody half to death when it came out, which is now 20 years ago. And so I think we need to own up to the fact that we have to be tech savvy to live in today's world. And we also should set standards. So you can have, as an organization, instead of creating a new technical checklist for every single system you bring in or every vendor or every platform, you can have a standard. You have your technical and operational measures document, and everyone adheres to that. And then it's a matter of going, okay, realistically, there aren't that many data privacy, security regulations. There aren't that many. And everybody that wants to do business in the world today can be held to the same set of standards. It's unfortunate, I think, that fear stops us in so many cases from just opening those documents and looking. They're probably not as scary if you actually open them. And then I'll give you another hint here is, use AI as your thought partner. Take that document and go, what is the risk with this document to my organization given these parameters? Give me a high level of the risk so that I know where to dig in. It's going to come in and it's going to give you, and then challenge it. For heaven's sakes, AI is the best thought partner we have ever had. I was telling somebody, friend of mine the other day, she's like, I really feel like I need a coach. And since we're friends, I cannot be her coach. And I said, right. But I said, just to get you started, I said, ChatGPT is excellent. Tell it what model of coaching you want. Tell it you said you already know your goal. You just told me your goal. And get it to ask you a few questions. And if you feel like at that point you're like, okay, I need a little more, then say, hey, can you recommend coaches for this topic? Now that we've dug into it a little, can you recommend coaches in my area? It is an amazing thought partner.
Totally. Absolutely. Rachel, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today and sharing such incredibly valuable and helpful perspective. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience, and where can people find you?
LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. So just search Rachel Walter. There's not too many of us out here, and I'm really noisy on LinkedIn, so it should be easy to find. That's probably the best way. And I think my last piece of advice is experiment. Just go try something. You may be surprised if you can build a habit of every single day doing one tiny experiment, whether that's one prompt in ChatGPT or one slide built with Copilot. Give it a shot. You may like it.
Awesome. So good. So good. Thank you so much again. And as always, thank you to our audience for joining.